Secrets, if you really look at yourself, you would be speechless. What happened to being doctors and teachers? What happened to being your brother's keeper? Nowadays, kids more worried about the
Love what you do. In this game of life, there's a plan for you. In this game of life, there's a plan for you. In this game of life, there's a plan for you. Love what you do and do what you love. What you do what you love. Make sure that it's come from above. Love what you do and do what you love.
Yo, what's good, y'all? Back at it again with another one of my famous rant / speaking my mind type of videos. Just wanted to take a break from working and all of that to give y'all some more, I guess, knowledge or things that I've been kind of noticing and just want to bring it to y'all attention. Even though my podcasts are now getting few and far in between because I've been having to turn my grind up even more when it comes to working and making sure that I'm constantly keeping money coming to me, because like I told y'all in my last podcast, I'm still looking for a place, whether it's a house or a condo, something that I can be able to afford, and preferably a place where I can stay by myself so that I'll really be able to get into the spiritual work. And sometimes when you have roommates and things like that, the energy kind of clashes a lot, and with me, I'm a lot better alone when it comes to different things, so that way the energy can be pure, it can be authentic, and it can be all mine. So again, if y'all know of any houses or any places that's the price is reasonable in Orlando, definitely shoot me an email and let me know. I've had this one person sent me an email talking about Daytona, and I would love to live in Daytona if I could find work out there, because I do show production type of work. I do audio, video, lighting, stagehand type of things. So all of my people that's in Daytona Beach, Florida, or Daytona, Florida, if y'all could point me to some companies out there that does this type of work, even if you're in Miami, because I was looking at Miami as well, but the cost of living is super high over there. So but I mean, I never say never. So all my Miami cats who listen to my podcast, even if y'all know of any show production type of companies out there, definitely let me know, because I'm looking. And despite all of that, as you can see in these screenshots and videos, Meliamar Jewelry and Gemstones is still in full effect. So if you want a bracelet or a necklace made, definitely shoot me an email and I'll give you my prices, and it'll most likely be that price plus however much it'll cost to ship it to you. I ain't balling like that, so I'm not at that point just yet where I can offer free shipping, but on down the line I may have a situation to where if you buy enough things from me, maybe I can add free shipping as like an incentive or something like that. And also on the apparel side of the game, I'm working with some designers so I can come out with some shirts, and man, these shirts are about to be bomb. So definitely keep in touch with me. Follow me on my Instagram, Shop Meliamar. That's at SHOPMELIAMAR. Also follow me on my Meliamar Jewelry and Gemstones Facebook page, because those are the two entities that's going to have all of the information when it comes to these things, because I try to keep my BandClap brand and my Meliamar brand separate, but until I fully get things situated with that brand, I'm doing a little cross promotion. So on down the line, I'm going to be looking for some brand ambassadors as well as some spokespeople who can speak for me when it comes to this brand. But those are some things that's going to be coming down the line when it comes to that. So enough about that. Let's talk about what I want to talk about, because my last video I talked about the archetype of the trickster, and I got a small bit of pushback when it came to that video, and I kind of expected that, because when people hear these words like trickster and pimp and player, Mac, all of these different type of words, with this society that we're living in, any archetype of person, whether positive or negative, who is able to alchemically make something that's meant for bad and turn it around for their good, is always going to be looked at as something bad in the eyes of society. And it's mainly done like this because they don't want the masses to be able to look at this archetype of a person as an example to live by. Now, an example of this, because in the video that I did about Nipsey Hussle, I did a San Andreas analogy when I was talking about the situation that happened with him, and I see that a lot of people was able to read between the lines, and people was very appreciative about that story. So for an example of this, I kind of want to do another video game reference when we talk about this trickster entity, just so I can explain it a little more better. Now, there are three types of people in the gaming community that people have a love-hate relationship with, and these three types of people people are the modders, the people who use cheat codes, and the speedrunners. And I'm going to explain these archetypes right quick on a personal level and on a gaming level, because most people know how it is in a gaming level, but on a personal level, a lot of people don't understand what this is because not everyone is into video games. Now, when it comes to the makers of the game, these three archetypes definitely have a love-hate relationship depending on the archetype. So the first archetype that I want to talk about is the person who uses cheat codes, because when it comes down to it, the person who uses cheat codes to beat the game is hated on the most by the gaming community, because that person isn't looked at as a winner, because essentially you cheated the game in order to win, whether you had unlimited ammo, unlimited money, and the greatest cheat code of all time, unlimited lives / invincibility. Now, for a minute, let me break down what exactly is a cheat code and how it originated, because when it comes to the game makers side of the scene, they don't have hatred for the person who uses cheat codes simply because they're the one that created the cheat code in the first place. So let me explain this. So when a game maker makes a game and the game is finished and is almost to that point where it's ready to be mass produced, so the game makers create these things called cheat codes, which may be a certain password phrase or a certain button combination that's already coded into the game, so that way the developers of the game can quote unquote cheat or have unlimited weapons or unlimited lives. Because essentially, if they were to go through the game like a normal gamer would go through the game, it would take way too long to test out the levels and all of that, making sure the mechanics and everything is working the way it's supposed to do. So they put these codes into the game so that way they can go through the game and be invincible, so that way they can check the levels out, make sure there aren't any glitches or anything that's gonna affect the normal gamer from getting a pleasurable experience while playing the game. So back in the day, cheat codes were a whole lot harder to come across, simply because the cheat code was only meant for the developers of the game to make sure that there aren't any glitches or anything like that, and the cheat code wasn't supposed to be meant for mass use. So usually the way it would work is either number one, you would have some type of whistleblower within the game maker community that will come out either with a magazine or something like that, and they tell you what the cheat code is, or by some crazy way a gamer who's just pressing a whole lot of button combinations or something like that ends up finding out that the button combination that they did turned out to be a cheat code, and then he or she shares that information with the rest of the gaming community. But as time went on and the age of information started to get more prevalent with people being on their computers and stuff like that, it got to the point where more video games and more video game companies started to add cheat codes to their video games. But in a lot of ways, it was still kind of a search to find the good cheat codes like invisibility or unlimited lives or something like that. Now, a cheat code like big head mode or inverted mode or something like that would be a whole lot easier to find than the code that you really need to beat the game. Now, the reason why I say that the game makers don't really have a hatred for people that use cheat codes is because, like I said before, they're the ones that let the cheat code be possible, meaning that if the code for that cheat code wasn't already written within the game, no matter how many times you put that button combination in, nothing would happen. So the fact that they created it also means that they control it, meaning that cheat codes were only permitted in personal home use. And even then, since the game makers are the one who created the cheat codes, which was something good for them, since they want to make sure to let you know that this is something that even though you're allowed to do it, it's frowned upon because you're meant to play the game in a linear type of situation. The makers of the game also created these things to fuck up your ego, to make you feel bad for using the cheat code. And since a lot of the gaming community also runs on ego, they too want to make you feel bad for using the cheat codes. So for example, to kind of clean up house when it comes to this, these game makers made these things called trophies, achievements, and milestones. Now, these three things don't have any monetary value within the game most of the time. These are things that only appease your ego for pretty much linearly playing the game like a good boy without using any kind of cheats or anything like that. And a lot of people in the gaming community, when you tell them that you played the game and you beat it and things like that, the first thing that they want to look at are your trophies and your milestones and your achievements. You know, we living in a society now to where you just playing the game and beating it isn't good enough. You have to quote unquote 100% the game in order to be looked at as a master of that game. And for the people who uses cheat codes, they're not looked at as a winner in the gaming community, because just like when you use a cheat code on Grand Theft Auto, whatever missions you start to play or whatever situations that you get in, it tells you right off top that pretty much when you put that cheat code in, you can no longer receive achievements or milestones or any trophies. And with some games like the old Grand Theft Autos, if you use too many cheat codes and you try to save your game, it'll literally corrupt your save file and fuck up the whole game, and you have to start all the way over from the beginning. Now, for the developers and the game makers, they don't go through this simply simply because when they put these cheat codes in, they play that full game in one sitting all the way through for the most part. You know, us, we can't do that because we have jobs and we have other lives and things outside of that game. So we have to save the game. And last but not least, now we live in a gaming world that everything is going online. You know, we're in a situation now to where we have to constantly prove ourselves to avatars, aka people that's behind a mask, people that's behind the screen, people that's behind the TV, some people that you would never even see ever in real life. And to make things quote unquote fair online, any cheat codes or anything like that are automatically disabled from the online portion of the game, meaning that when you play online, automatically the cheat code isn't supposed to work. So not trying to harp more on this situation with Nipsey, but just in a nutshell, the ghetto and what you call the hood are like video games that were created by the soulless beings, which are the game makers. And when you're raised in these quote unquote games, there's a end goal or a linear path that you're supposed to go down, and that end goal on that path is going to always be destruction, self-mutilation, or disintegration, which all of these things will be used as fuel for the larger system to flourish. So for a person that's growing up in the hood, you know, a person that grew up in the ghetto, they're awakened to the point where they see that you going to school and graduating, getting a job, going to college, they see that a lot of that stuff is a lot of bullshit. And in a lot of those situations, you're struggling really bad right now, meaning that in your mindset, you don't really have that kind of time to wait and do all of that stuff, because in this real fucked up environment that you're in, you're seeing your best friends die right in front of you. You're seeing family members die because of their struggling and all of the stuff that you go through in that environment that's very, very toxic. So going back to my analogy, you look at the Pookie and Ray Ray that's in your neighborhood, you know, he riding on 2020 twins with the 15s in the back. When you see him, he always got the freshest clothes on. He always got the hottest girls on his arm, and he's just this cool cat that's respected in the streets. And you wondering, you like, number one, how did he do it? And number two, what is it about him that's just so respectable that he's not getting robbed, being that he's one of the only guys that's on this block that has all this money and has all of this jewelry and fancy car and all of that. So with you being the typical starving guy in the hood that doesn't really have a big Papa Legba or a father figure in your life, period, you aspire to be that Pookie and Ray Ray, because in your eyes, they made it. In your eyes, they're the most alpha version of the environment that you're in. So one day you flag Pookie and Ray Ray down, or maybe you see them in passing or something like that. And if they aren't too busy doing what they're doing, they sit that boy down and quote unquote give them the game, give them the cheat codes that they need to be in this game and win this game, meaning being hood rich or being ghetto fabulous. Because in the world of that little boy who's starving and hungry and ready to get to this money, degrees, certificates, and work certifications are looked at as the trophies, the milestones, and the achievements. And he's looking at those things as only things to appease your ego. But number one, it takes too long to get them, and he doesn't look at these things as something that's going to put money in your pocket right now. Now, for the makers of the game, meaning the soulless beings who created that ghetto that both of those archetypes are living in, the nice cars, the nice jewelry, and pretty much everything that makes Pookie and Ray Ray seem alpha to all of those quote unquote starving little boys. Because in the rest of the community in the hood, they're quote unquote brainwashed, thinking that those degrees and certificates and certifications are the only way that you're gonna beat this game, meaning the only way that you're gonna get out of the hood. So for that community, the Pookie and Ray Ray archetype, aka the person who's using the cheat codes, they aren't respected. And most of the times when you have a boy or person that's raised in the hood, they're always taught to not associate with Pookie and Ray Ray, and you don't ever want to be like Pookie and Ray Ray. But for that starving little boy, Pookie and Ray Ray is God to them. So, but what the game makers know is that since they created Pookie and Ray Ray, he's not really a threat to them, simply because the minute Pookie and Ray Ray step out of that hood and they either try to go international or try to travel to a different environment, and they carry those same antics and they carry those same habits and ways of life that they were so successful at in the hood, Pookie and Ray Ray is easy to be locked up, easily to be put in jail. A lot of them, they're literally one wrong sale away from being put to life in prison, or at least going to jail for a long time. But see, to a lot of the Pookies and Ray Rays out there, especially the ones who didn't have any guidance from the Sylvesters and Leotises of the world. And if you all don't know anything about these names that I'm saying, go back and listen to the podcast that I did about Nipsey Hussle. A lot of these Pookies and Ray Rays, even though they may have quote unquote beat the game, they've only beat the game in their hood, meaning that the quote unquote cheat code, which is to flip major drugs like opioids and cocaine and all of that type of stuff, because unlike weed, 1 gram of that can make you a lot more money, even though law wise it's a lot more dangerous. And all of these quote unquote starving little boys who was just innocently looking for a way to feed their family and take care of their home and all of that, they're thinking that trying to become a Pookie and Ray Ray is a way to outsmart the game when they truly don't understand that trying to beat Pookie and Ray Ray is a part of the game as well. So that's the archetype of the person who uses cheat codes. Now, the second archetype that I want to talk about is the modder. Now, the modder, he's a very special type of person because the modder is someone who looks at the game on a coded level, meaning that while we all see the game for what it is, the modder sees the game as a bunch of zeros and ones and different code. So when it comes to intelligence and intellect, in a lot of ways, the mod creator is the smartest mentally out of the three, because the modder on a inward type of level has studied the code that is responsible for making the game extensively to the point where he's able to create his own code and make things happen in the game at his will. Now, in a lot of ways, the modder has a very dangerous type of job because the game is only meant to be played in a linear type of way. It's not meant to be examined and all of that, and it's definitely not meant to be modified in a way that the video game makers didn't do themselves. So for the speedrunner and the modder archetype, these are the archetypes that are kind of hated when it comes to the video game maker community, but they are loved by the video game community. And the only way that a modder or a speedrunner would be hated on by the community is because of someone who wishes that either A, they came up with the idea first so they could be the one to get all the glory, or B, because they were pissed off that they had to beat the game linearly when you decided to instead learn more about the game you were playing, so that way you can put your own code in there and make the game work for you. So pretty much it's just a jealousy and envy type of situation. But for the most part, once you as a modder have done all of the hard work, all of the trial and error, because messing with the code of the game is very dangerous, because one false move, one wrong move, now the whole game crashed and it's useless now. So as a modder, inwardly, you know this game inside and out, code wise. So now you're able to write your own code in to do things that the makers of the game didn't really make cheat codes for. So for example, you playing Grand Theft Auto and all of a sudden you push a barrage of keys on your keyboard and this little table comes up where you can make different cars appear, or you can make dinosaurs appear, or you can turn yourself into Spider-Man or the Incredible Hulk, or you press a button and everybody starts fighting or anything. Now the thing is, with all three of these archetypes that I'm talking about, when it's just you at home doing this just for your personal enjoyment, nothing is really going to happen to you until you start going online and start showing people and things like that. So when the modder goes online, he's in a lot more danger than the cheater, because just like me, since I created my own code into the game, something that I can turn on and turn off at will and all of that, it's not something that the makers of the game know to disable. So in a lot of situations, you can kind of slip through the cracks and play online with mods. But in the online community, mods and cheat codes are the same thing, meaning that if you get caught using these things online, or if too many people are using these mods en masse and the game makers or the moderators are alerted about this, you will be completely banned from the server, meaning that your account will be banned and you'll never be able to go online again for a certain amount of time or whatever. So a perfect real world example of some quote unquote modders when it comes to our society that we live in are the Dr. Sabys of the world, and the Delbert Blairs of the world, and the Bobby Hemmett and Brother Panics of the world. But in this particular analogy, I want to use Dr. Sebi, because in his situation, he was fighting against the FDA, pharmaceutical industries, and all of these industries were created by the soulless beings to sell you a lot of false hope, to legalize poisons, and on the back end, they create these same parasitic quote unquote diseases that would make you sick, so that way you can come to them to quote unquote be healed. And it's just a never ending cycle that's bad for you, but it's good for them because they get money from it. And if any of you all know who Natural Tahuti is, he was one of the people that pointed a lot of these things out when he talked about how a lot of these sicknesses and things like that, they're patented by the government, and they're also labeled as uncurable diseases, meaning unbeatable games. And these game makers make a lot of money because they instill fear in the world, aka in the gaming community, because they feel like once you get in this game, it's pretty much game over. And the linear path that you're supposed to go through is to go through their doctor system, hospital system, take the pills that they created to give you some type of sense that whatever you're going through is still gonna kill you, but it's just gonna be a slower death, meaning that it's just gonna give you a little bit more time to live before you die. Then you have someone like Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi, he looked at the coding of the game, meaning that he looked at the metaphysics of nature, and he looked at the metaphysics of plants and herbs and their chemical makeup, and he learned how to put different herbs and put different things together to heal the unhealable, aka he created mods. And if you were able to to use these mods, now that unbeatable game is now beatable. And sometimes when you get to the end, you see that the video game makers didn't really create an end because they really didn't see you being able to get that far in the game. That's why they pushed the fact that the game is unbeatable, because you're not supposed to get to the part where they either ran out of time creating it, so it's just a huge glitch, or you just start to see how much of a bullshit the game really is. And this was cool when Dr. Sebi was in Honduras on his own land and doing everything, but as soon as he tried to go international, and as soon as you had other American stars like Left Eye who tried to internationalize Dr. Sebi, and people like Nipsey who was trying to do a documentary about Dr. Sebi, this is when a lot of these quote-unquote holistic doctors end up dead, because again, they're fucking with the church's money. These game makers make millions and millions of dollars deceiving you and telling the masses that the game is unbeatable, and you call yourself trying to make a mod that's gonna in turn expose that bullshit lie that the game is unbeatable. And you think you're gonna go online and give this mod to the masses, this information that you can add your own code in the game and make the game work for you? Hell no, that's not how this game is supposed to be played. But even in another sense, the people who are modders in our society not only are the scientists and the chemists metaphysically in our community, they're also the magicians in our community. People like Bobby Hemmett, who's been through a lot of spiritual things in his life, and he's already tried and tested different things to the point where now he's able to give us different spells and different rituals and different things to drink and different things to put around your house, different stones and oils and all of these things that will naturally attract the things that you want into your life without you having to quote unquote go through this life like everyone else, struggling and selling your soul, all things that the soulless beings would rather you do. And these spiritual teachers, their life is constantly on the line, because not only are they using the mods themselves on a grand/online type of scale, they're also trying to give this information to other people so that they can create a different way out than the average person, which is extremely dangerous. And they're always at a risk of being banned, deleted/killed unless they've quote unquote modified that side of the game as well. And I can do a whole podcast just talking about that, because the best example of that is someone like Bobby Hemmett, someone who since the 90s been giving y'all this information to live your life magically, where you don't have to struggle like the average person. Now, you're still going to have to put work in, but the result is going to be something that's far greater. And the reason why the soulless beings wasn't able to delete him out the game is because, like I always tell you all, he came into the game with some real power, that type of real power that even a soulless being can't touch, or that soulless being would disintegrate. But see, that's a whole nother level right there. That's the type of level that a lot of people say is sold, not told. So that's the archetype of the modder, because the reason why the video game community love modders, and when you really look at this on a grand level, there's only going to be a small number of people in the grand scale that's going to even be able to use mods, because for the most part, only the PC games have the best mods. And number two, since the mod isn't a cheat code, meaning that you just have to press a combination of buttons and the cheat code will work, for the most times with a mod, it's a lot more work that you have to do, because you pretty much have to also go into the code of the game and copy and paste different things and download different patches and all of that kind of stuff in order to get the desired outcome that you want once you start playing the game. And even the people who are on a third party level using those mods, they have to be aware too, because like I said, the video game maker community, they kind of hate modders, because modders are people who keeps them on their toes, because every time a new mod comes out and too many people start using it, the video game makers make sure to add an update to the game, so that way if you try to use the mod and you don't got your ear to the streets, that mod would automatically crash your game or something. For example, when that whole sovereignty thing came out, and when that thing came out where people in Canada started to connect their birth certificate to the banks and all of that stuff, and you had people who were actually getting money off of their birth certificate, and then in the US you had black people who were claiming sovereignty and they were getting out of prison sentences and having all of these crazy type of benefits and all of this stuff, to the point where the government did a update, and the Canadian government did a update, so that way if you in 2019 try to claim sovereignty, or if you're a Canadian resident in 2019 who tries to do that, it's just not going to work anymore, because they've already updated their system. But like I said, even to be a modder, there's still an amount of work that you have to put in order to make the mod work. And even though when you look on YouTube and you see people that's using the mods and it looks all cool and all of that, even though deep down inside you would wish to do that yourself, most people just aren't going to just have the patience and the time and attention to do it. And that's something else that ultimately the video game maker community knows. So they know that it's going on, but it's going to be kind of impossible to stop everybody that's doing it. That's why we really have to stick together and protect our quote unquote modders in our community, because they're the reason why we're able to live magically and live in our best lives without having to go through all of these shenanigans that we would have to go through had these mod makers not put in the extensive amount of work that they had to put in order to create these mods for us. Now, last but not least, the third archetype that I want to cover are the speedrunners of the world. Now, I would say when it comes to the love and hate meter of the video game maker community, I would say that speedrunners are hated the most, and I'm going to explain why. Now, a speedrunner in a lot of ways is the same as a modder, but he just does it externally. So in a lot of situations, the speedrunner is someone who played the game so much and in so many different types of ways and beat the game in so many different styles and different fashions, to the point where he's found the glitches in the game that when the developer went through the game with the quote-unquote cheat codes, he missed them because he thought that he's already covered all of the bases and created a glitch-free game. So now this speedrunner has played this game so much that now he's able to calculate every move, and he's able to calculate every step in a perfect type of way, and he's able to use certain glitches in the game to propel him past different stages that in other situations would have been super difficult, and he's just pretty much able to breeze through the game at an amazing speed. So for an example, when different videos would come up on YouTube where you had people who was beating Super Mario Brothers and Sonic the Hedgehog at amazing speeds, like people was able to beat Super Mario Brothers the full game in like 5 minutes, and people was able to beat Sonic the Hedgehog the whole game in like 30 minutes and all of this stuff. And the thing about it is, these speedrunners get millions and millions of views on YouTube because it just seems like what they're doing is just so unbelievable, but they just don't understand, again, all of the trial and error and hard work on the external side that speedrunner had to do before he was able to finally make that perfect video that he was able to complete that game in under 5 minutes or under 10 minutes. Now, this is one of those situations where the bulk of the gaming community don't really look at this as something that they necessarily want to do, simply because when you're speed running through the game and using the glitches in the game to beat the game, you're not getting any achievements or milestones or trophies, because in order for you to get those things, you have to go through the game regularly and go through certain checkpoints in order to get that. And also, most people that buy the game, they're buying the game for a certain type of experience, and they like to immerse themselves in the game. I mean, why would you want to buy a game and pay $50 or $60 for a game just to see someone beat it in under 5 minutes? You have a sector of the gaming community that looks at that as a waste of money, and this is what the game makers fear, because at the end of the day, the job of the game makers is to make you want to play the game linearly and regularly, because that's how they make their money. Because now in these games, they got certain levels that your armor or whatever you have won't even be powerful enough to go through those levels. So now they got these things called loot boxes and loot crates and things where you have to spend real money on top of the money that you use to buy the game. Now you have to spend more money in order to progress through the game, which I feel like is a crock of bullshit. And all of my people who play 2K, y'all know what I mean when I'm talking about different levels that you're not even really going to be able to reach like that unless you have a certain amount of VC that you have to pay for with real money. So in a lot of ways, the game makers feel like speedrunners are a detriment to them, because if too many people see that their game is full of glitches and that their game can be beaten in a matter of minutes, I mean, what's going to make you want to buy that game? And they know that we live in a social media type of society to where instead of people playing the game for themselves or at least getting a demo or something, they rather go to YouTube and watch IGN reviews about the game, watch speedrunners play the game and all of that stuff. And those things will pretty much determine if they want to spend their money and buy that game or not. And if they continually keep seeing that image, for some gamers, it's going to make them not want to buy the game, because like I said, they don't know all of the stuff that speedrunner had to do. All they see is the finished result video on YouTube. And like I said, this is something that the game makers dread to happen. So this is why you have companies like Nintendo who started to ban and send cease and desist letters out to a lot of these speedrunners, and getting a lot of these Nintendo speedrunning videos banned from YouTube, because those video game makers, when they come out with that statement saying that in order for you to beat their game, it's going to take you about 30 hours or it's going to take you 40 hours, just like the modder. If you come out with a video showing you doing it in a record time that's like 5 or 10 minutes, that's bad for business. So it's like, even though they know that most people enjoy the game for what it is, just to keep their image intact, they're gonna ban your video just because you're showing a certain image of that game. I mean, the shit is crazy. So like I always do, let's bring this to a 3D personal type of level. When it comes to the economic game, you got people like Dr. Boyce Watkins, who in the black community is very revered because of his economic economic programs and his economic teachings on showing you how to play this game correctly and get the money out of it that you need to get out of it, so that way you won't have to struggle like the average person who doesn't know about economics and how important it is to make sure that your money is going in the right place, even if it's just a small amount of money that you have. Now, even though Boyce Watkins is revered, just like I said about the video game community, I look at his live streams and I see thousands of people watching his videos. But on the flip side, I don't see 1,000 new black businesses being started up. I don't see 1,000 new black owned grocery stores being brought up. I don't see 1,000 black owned medical centers and 1,000 black owned drugstores and all of that, because at the end of the day, to a lot of our people in the black community, economics isn't something that we really care about like that, because a lot of us are asleep. A lot of us, we think it's way too hard to start our own business. A lot of us, due to these parasitic foods and these parasitic women that a lot of you all have around you just because they look good, and a lot of these parasitic things in the media and all of these things that is made to bog you down so much and is made to suck the creativity out of you to the point where you feel like you was pretty much put on this earth to work for somebody else, because you're constantly getting your energy sucked from you so much that you don't even have enough for yourself to even be creative. Not only that, creative enough to start your own business and to go through with it, because I can't even lie, it takes a lot of energy to do that. In my process of starting Melly Amar, in order for me to really get focused on this and making this vision a reality, there was a lot of things that I had to cut out my life for a while. There's a lot of things that I had to abstain from just so I can get this out, and in order for me to keep my creative energy going to the point where I wanted to keep doing this business, I had to cut back on, number one, telling it to everybody, because not everybody is going to give you that positive energy to motivate you, simply because most people are asleep. So how can they see your vision if they're asleep? I mean, I definitely had to abstain from sex for a while just so I can get my mind right and get back into that creative space, because for a man, a lot of our creative energy gets drained out when we have sex naturally, because that creative energy along with the woman's womb is what's used to create a baby. But when you get into that drawing board phase of creating your business, you need all the creative energy that you can get, because in this situation, it's like you're pregnant and the business is your fetus, and the more energy that you take away from that fetus, meaning the more you let other things distract you from creating this business that's gonna eventually make you a lot of money, if you keep doing that, it's gonna get to the point where you're not even gonna want to do the business anymore, aka you having a miscarriage. So just like the modders, like Bobby Hemmett and Delbert Blair and Brother Panic, just like they're targeted a lot, people like Boyce Watkins are targeted too, simply because this system only wants black people to flourish in certain things that they deem for us to flourish in, where they can control and manipulate the situation at any time for it to be to our detriment. And if it's not those few and far in between things that they want us to flourish in, for the most part, they just want us to stay asleep economically so that we can be fuel for them. Because when it comes to us black people, we're more useful to the soulless beings when we're in a sleep programmable and overall fearful type of state, because we can easily be controlled and manipulated in those states. Because remember, money is a form of currency, which is a form of energy, at least in this world. So when you have a lot of money and a lot of currency, that means that you have a lot of energy. And people who are rich and conscious is also something that this system that was created by soulless beings dreads to happen. So all in all, to bring this to a close, because this rant, I kind of did it backwards, because usually at the beginning I tell you pretty much what's in the title first and then I go on with my spiel, but this one I wanted to do it on a flip type of way. So the moral of the story is, when it comes to this game, it takes a fool to learn. So how I came up with this topic, I was doing my usual, listening to some alpha male red pill content about all of these dudes that's doing the same thing, expecting a different result, and they always end up with the same heartbreak and the same hurt, while you have the quote-unquote modders and speedrunners like Dr. BOA, like Alfie Kingdom, like Kevin Samuels and C Boogie, who's trying to give them the cheat code to get ahead in this game, which is understanding female nature. A lot of these guys are so traumatized and so hurt and so emotionally asleep to the point where, like C Boogie would say, they're finished. Meaning that some of them will never learn. So I was doing my little spliffy, you know what I mean? And something told me to listen to this song by the Spinners called It Takes a Fool to Learn That Love Don't Love Nobody. And I'm looking like, yo, I remember listening to this song as a kid and I never really understood what that song meant. I mean, naturally, because I haven't been in love before. But now listening to this song as an older man who's been in love plenty times and have experienced these things that the Spinners talk about in their song, I understand what it means when they say it takes a fool to learn that love don't love nobody. But I'm gonna take it a step further. Period. It takes a fool to learn. I'm gonna say it again. It takes a fool to learn. I bet y'all like, man, what the hell is this dude talking about? Think about it for a second. The reason why these achievements, like the trophies and the achievements and the milestones, the reason why these things only appease your ego, but it keeps you asleep spiritually is because, being completely honest, you're not truly learning anything. You're just pretty much comprehending what a teacher told you in a lecture, or you're comprehending what you read in a school book that was written by the same soulless beings that created this system that we're living in. You don't really start learning until you get out here in life and get off the beaten path and start going through some real shit. But here's the thing, every time you quote unquote go off the beaten path and you get burned or you get fucked up, people on the outside that's looking in and think that they got an authority in your life in some type of way, they're gonna always look at you as a fool, because they're like, damn, you should have seen that coming, you should have expected that. But what they don't realize is, you being the scientist, you being that person who sees the bigger picture, you see something that's too big of a picture that those people can't even see, and that's what motivates you to keep doing it. Now, it's one thing that my grandma always told me. She said it's a difference between a fool and a damn fool. When you look up fool in the etymology dictionary, it tells you that a fool is just someone who's ignorant, and if you're ignorant, you're innocent, because if you're ignorant, that means that you just don't know, and someone who's ignorant is innocent. Like, if a baby touch a flame, just them getting burned is discipline enough, because they're a baby. I mean, how would they have known that fire burns? They've never been in this world before. So since that baby was ignorant but innocent, that baby would be considered a fool just by breaking down that word alone, for even going up to that fire and touching it. And the thing about it is, even when we go back to these archetypes, when it comes to the video game analogy, if those video game archetypes were around a whole lot of people while they was working on their craft at being a modder or a speed runner or even using cheat codes, every time that person that uses cheat codes would mess up the button combination, every time that modder would put in the wrong code and crash his game, every time that speed runner would miss a step and now he has to start all the way over, that crowd of people would be calling them a fool for even attempting to do something that's against just beating the game regularly. But what separates them and what doesn't turn them into a damn fool is that every time they mess up, not only do they learn from their mistakes, they got the balls to go off the beaten path again with the mistakes that they learned, and they keep on trying till one day they strike gold and they end up finding a breakthrough, meaning that they end up finding a glitch, or they end up getting the code right for a change, or they end up finding a faster way to beat a level because they learned the game. Because it's a difference between playing the game and learning the game. The system doesn't want you to learn their game, they just want you to play it, because you learning the game and doing all these things is taking money out of their pocket. Just like a lot of this knowledge that a lot of these spiritual teachers and all of these people are spreading is aiding in the crashing of this system. But see, when that fool finally gets it right and he starts to post the result on YouTube, it's looked at as a marvelous thing, when in the process he was a fool. So that's why I say, when it comes to this game, and even when it comes to life, it takes a fool to learn. It takes someone who is innocent, someone who's able to go through this life and go through the ups and downs and not let it get to them mentally and emotionally, to the point where when they get to their desired place, they're able to, in a holistic type of way, give that wisdom to somebody else. So in closing, I want to leave y'all with a pataki about Elegua, because Elegua is synonymous with the Joker, the Fool, Tarot card, the Trickster entities, especially when he's coupled with Eshu. And most of all, along with Oshun, he's one of the most misunderstood Orishas, because in the religion of Santeria and the Yoruba, Elegua is a child. So in this pataki, we're going to be talking about Olofi. And just in a small synopsis, Olofi is like the supreme god when it comes to the earth realm, and he's one of the three manifestations of Olodumare, which is pretty much the god of the universe. And Olofi is the one who is responsible for giving the Orishas their powers, and he's responsible for appointing these people as Orishas. So there was a period where Olofi got gravely ill, and his illness came from him being very dissatisfied with the way things was going on the earth realm, and that he gave these Orishas power to make sure that the earth is always in order. And when that's not done, he takes a very emotional hurt when it comes to that. So him being so worried and so angry about it made him kind of sick. So a very huge meeting ended up being called. So all the Orishas ran to the kingdom of Olofi so they can try to heal him and put him back in good spirits. So every Orisha did whatever thing that they tried to do in their power to bring Olofi into good health, but none of them was successful at doing it. Now, before I even go deeply into this pataki, I gotta give y'all a small flashback about Elegua. So for everybody who knows about the story of Ogun and Yemoya, how Ogun used to rape Yemoya, and to keep everybody quiet, he would make sure that everyone ate and all of that kind of stuff. And since Elegua never told a lie, and since Elegua loves his parents, Ogun knew that it was going to come a time to where Elegua was going to end up snitching to Obatala when he got home from work. So just like I said in my example about the little brother and the big brother, one day Ogun promised Elegua that he was going to feed him and all of that, and he knew that he wasn't going to take that promise to heart. And when Elegua found out that he wasn't going to honor it, Elegua proceeded to run and go find his father and tell him what's been going on. And in his adventure of finding his father, he ended up getting lost at a crossroad. So with Elegua getting quote unquote off the beaten path, and with him being so innocent, he was able to meet a lot of friends while he was lost in the woods, aka the Fairy Kingdom. And the Fairy Kingdom, with Elegua being out in nature, is what taught him about the herbs and taught him about different stones on the ground that held certain energies and brought certain powers. And this kind of stuff started to fascinate Elegua. And this is the part of Elegua's life that really turned him into the ultimate magician. And everything that he learned on the way off of this beaten path in the woods, he took that knowledge with him. So Elegua would have a small bag with him, and that bag would have different herbs, different stones that was known to bring a certain type of energy, known to bring a certain type of effect to you. Now, in this day and time, we call that a mojo bag. So, alright, so let's go back to the original story. So, all of these Orishas was doing the things that they thought would make Olofi happy and cure him of his sickness. But one by one, they all failed. Even the great mother Yemoya and the great father Obatala, they tried to do things to help Olofi. Even Oshun, with her sensual dancing and her delectable honey, couldn't heal him. Even Oya or any other Orishas, they couldn't heal him. So Elegua, with him being quote unquote off the beaten path and all of the knowledge that he had, which surpassed a lot of them. But the thing about it is, Elegua is a little boy. So he tried to go up and get to Olofi, because just looking at him, he already knew what was wrong with him, because with him getting all the knowledge that he had, he seen stuff like that going on with animals and all of that. He's seen stuff like this going on before, and he's cured this many a times. But like I said, everyone saw Elegua as a fool because he was so young, and they felt like he was ignorant and he didn't know nothing. So he went to just about every single Orisha to try to let him get to the front so he can do what he wanted to do to heal Olofi. But none of the Orishas wanted to give him a chance but one, and it was Obatala, because it's one of those situations to where a baby wants to do something and everybody is telling them no, and then the dad is just like, look, just let him go ahead and do it. I mean, it's not gonna hurt. I mean, we all tried and we failed, so even though we all know that he's most likely gonna fail, just let him try anyway, just so he can stop crying. So Obatala gave him a chance. So Elegua went to the throne of Olofi, and as soon as he went up there, Olofi's eyes kind of rose up a little bit, like, number one, who is this child's mom and dad, and why is he up here thinking that he can get in grown folks' business? But number two, he was kind of curious, like, if this boy persevered this much just to get to me, he must know something that they don't. So let's see what he can do. So all the other Orishas sucking their teeth, you know, they pissed off, and some of the Orishas are concerned, like, damn, if he go up there and make a fool of himself, we're not gonna hear the last of it from him or Olofi. So there's a lot of hate and a lot of negativity that's going on with them, but Elegua is using all of this as motivation because he already know what's up. So he walks up, reaches inside his mojo bag, pull a few herbs out and grinds it up. Then he gets in Olofi's lap, opens up his mouth and put the herbs in his mouth, and he just stands there waiting to see what Olofi's reaction is going to be. And boy, was they shocked. It was like watching a video of a flower blooming at 2x speed. How Olofi sprang up. Olofi was like,
my God, what is that? What was that concoction that you made out of those herbs that got me feeling so good?
and Elegua was like,
A magician never reveals his secrets.
and that's when Olofi declared
That from this day forth, not only will you be one of the most important Orishas, you're going to have a special role, meaning that no one is going to be able to come forth to the Orishas without getting your permission first. And not only that, you're also going to sit at the right hand of the Most High, being my official messenger. So now, in order for the Orishas to even get to me, they're going to have to go through you first. Now, what do you think about that, Lil Elegua?
And Lil Elegua stood in front of the throne, looked out at all of the Orishas that doubted him, all of the Orishas that was hating on him, all of the Orishas that was so gung-ho about him failing and anticipated his demise. He looked at them and he said, man, I love these stories about Elegua. So I know this rant video was a lot longer than my usual ones, but I just had a whole lot that I wanted to just talk about, and thank everybody who was able to listen all the way to the end. I still got a little more to talk about when it comes to this archetype of the fool and the archetype of the trickster, and when I do the podcast about Biggie, all of this stuff is going to make so much sense. So again, if y'all want a bracelet like the ones that you saw within this video, definitely let me know. Shoot me an email. I'll shoot you my prices. Right now, I'm doing the protection bracelet. I got the Oshun and Shango bracelets. You can look at those on my Instagram. That's Shop Milliamar. And like I said before, anyone in the Orlando, Daytona, and even Miami area, if y'all know of any show production gigs or places to stay that aren't too expensive, let me know. And so next time, BandClap TV, we out.